Shabbat Shalom. That was a hearty Shabbat Shalom. I love that. I love that. One of my oldest friends lives in Minneapolis, and I reached out early this week to check in, and she wrote back simply, "Not good. It's so bad, and I'm not even at risk." Well, I guess I am now because peaceful protesters are being attacked. I replied, "It's awful and devastating and infuriating and scary," and she answered, "Yes, all of those things." A classmate of mine served as the rabbi of Beth Israel in Jackson, Mississippi for 12 years, and she wrote, "Words are not working well for me today. There have been tears as I talk to friends from Jackson. New information has been released. It is disturbing and shakes the ground that usually holds me up. I feel shaky and off center. Oh, America, what have we become? Or perhaps more honestly, what has always been there and that has now been unleashed? This country is our home. It has offered opportunity and blessing, yes, but not equally. For some and not for others. When will redemption come? When will redemption come? On August 28, 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Reflecting on the Emancipation Proclamation, he said that 100 years later, Black Americans still found themselves in exile in their own land. He spoke of a promissory note written by the architects of our republic, a promise that all people would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, a promise that has come back marked insufficient funds. How many today feel that same exile in their own land? Black people, Jews, immigrants, women, Black women, white women, Latino women. In Martin Luther King's speech, he only spoke of men. This is exile. When we are painfully distant from the promise, when the gap between what should be and what feels is unbearable, when leaders like our president spew lies and hatred and stoke unrest rather than uphold that sacred promissory note. In this week's parasha, God appears to Moshe while the Israelites are enslaved and suffering in exile. God says, "I am Adonai, I appeared to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov." Rashi adds a small but curious detail about this, the fact that God says, I appeared to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And Rashi says, those are the avot, the forefathers, which is kind of an odd thing to say because we all know that. So the Chatam Sofer asked the question, what is Rashi actually adding? He teaches that avot, the forefathers, is related to the root aleph bet he, meaning desire. God reveals God's self to those who truly desire God, as Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov did. Just verses later, God declares the great promises of redemption. I will free you from the burdens of Egypt. I will deliver you. I will redeem you. I will take you to be my people. I will bring you into the land. We know these from the Pasach Seder. V'hotzeti, v'hitzalti, v'ga'alti, v'lakachti, v'heveti. Redemption begins when exile becomes intolerable. Rav Yaakov Moshe Harlap teaches that the Jewish people have an extraordinary ability to endure exile, but when redemption draws near, there is a reawakening, a moment when it becomes impossible to tolerate the suffering any longer. That reawakening itself, he says, is a sign of redemption. Implicit in these verses is a question: have we tolerated enough? Enough tolerance for inhumanity, enough tolerance for indignity and cruelty and hatred, enough tolerance for anti-Semitism, for racism, for xenophobia and Islamophobia. We are beginning, I hope, to see that reawakening. My friend in Minneapolis has been paired with an Ecuadorian family, bringing them groceries so they do not have to leave their home. She has stood outside as a witness of a school while suspicious cars, supposedly ICE, drive by looking to come in. One of thousands Minnesotans saying, no more, standing at the entrances to Target and schools and policing, neighbors policing to make sure no one comes in to people's homes. Clergy from around the country are going to be traveling to Minnesota next week to say no more. In Jackson, Mississippi, churches and pastors have risen up also to say the same. After the anti-Semitic attack in Beth Israel, Pastor Chuck Poole wrote a public lament. He spoke, actually, he had written a piece following the terrorist attack in Bondi in Australia. And he spoke of praying in solidarity with Beth Israel synagogues in his life, one from Macon, Georgia, and the other in Jackson, Mississippi, and with Jews everywhere. He acknowledged with sorrow and repentance the church's long history of sowing seeds of anti-Semitism, writing, "Hitler did not create the ghetto, we did." And he ended with the words addressed from centuries-spanning church to the centuries-spanning synagogue, "We are sorry." That is what redemption looks like at its beginnings. Solidarity, repentance, awakening. We have to desire a world redeemed. We must want it. We must want to risk for it and demand it. Redemption will not come while we silently read the newspaper in anguish. It will come when we remember the promise and refuse to tolerate a reality so far from it, when we insist that the promised land must begin here and now. Shabbat awakens that promise. Shabbat reminds us not only of creation, but of redemption. And on this Shabbat of Martin Luther King weekend, we are called not only to dream, but to wake up. Hit'orari, we'll say in just a few moments. Awaken, not only to believe that redemption is possible, but to help bring it into being.